Thank you for joining us this evening at Friends of North Kensington, our library saved. We're going to be going live any second now. We must remind you all comments are moderated and observed, so please be respectful, show some respect to each other, show some respect to the community, and we'll have another fantastic evening. We're just about to go live. Thank you very much for joining us. Please don't forget to pop your messages in the box. We'll put them up on screen. All messages will be displayed and people will see them. If you're in the Zoom room, please keep an eye on Facebook and YouTube as well, because the messages will be displayed on the screen there. Thank you very much.
So we are inviting you today to join us in celebrating the power of our community to organise.
And now that the council has made a commitment that the library will remain a public asset and a library, this is a living testimony to the truth that collectively we can and do make a huge difference.
Come and join the Friends of North Kensington Library to celebrate a new phase in this historic building's life.
As one of the first public-built libraries, this library has always represented the energy and commitment of communities, organising to secure their future through self-education.
However, in recent years, the commitment of councils to this principle has been weakened by successive governments.
We all know it took the awful events of Grenfell Tower to put an end to plans that would have handed our library over to private interests.
But our diverse community here in North Kensington has a long and proud history
of standing up and resisting the onslaughts of developers.
When our friends of the library got together, the whole case looked absolutely hopeless.
And it continued to look hopeless for much of the campaign.
Still, we persisted.
Through the most difficult moments, when losing the library to private interests seemed like a fait accompli, the Friends of North Kensington Library came together.
We were endlessly supported by the many community groups and organisations that make up the network of self-supporting and community-led groups that have been so important to securing the future of public space in this area.
Even when they are in ways we cannot predict, could not hope for, or aren't able to perceive.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this evening in the third of our 7 talks in the series of Our Spaces. This evening, we have a talk on our learning, knowledge and skills. We're looking forward to being hosted this evening by one of our great advocates for learning, Mukhtar. We'll be introducing our 3 fantastic panelists soon from our local community. But before that, we'd like to play you a short film to remind all of us of why we're here this evening. 72-second silence to remember and respect all of those who lost their lives and who have been deeply affected by the Grenfell fire that led to the saving of our library. And now, over to your host for this evening, Mukhtar.
Thank you, Toby. I want to start just by saying how excited I am for today. I think we are so lucky to have such an incredible panel joining us this evening, and I'm really, really excited to hear all about their thoughts on the theme of the day, which, as Toby mentioned, revolves around the concept of knowledge and learning. And this is something that I think for many of us from North Kensington is really at the heart and soul of everything that we do. North Kensington is such a rich and colourful community that is home to such a range of creativity and excellence. And I think tonight we're going to do well to really dig deep into some of the ideas underpinning why this community is behind such a range of knowledge and learning. So without further ado, I'm going to briefly introduce our panel, our esteemed panel, I should say, and then I'll actually pass over to the panel to maybe add a little bit more of an intro, and hopefully we can go from there. So joining us today, we have Phil San from the esteemed organization Medea. I will allow Phil San to elaborate when I pass over shortly. Just briefly, we've got Eversley from Metronomes. Really excited to hear about how your understanding of knowledge and learning applies in slightly a different context. We're looking at the music, Eversley, and then we've got Moira, who I have so much.
I think we've lost Mokhtar
tonight on everything that the wealth of knowledge that you have when it comes to learning. So I'll pass over to the panel to maybe add a few more words in terms of introduction before we begin. Maybe I can start with you, Moira, if that's okay.
Yes. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me on this panel. I came into the local area over 30 years ago, and I came initially teaching on a youth training course in Harrow Road, and that was in the late 80s, and have not left since. I mean, who'd want to leave such an amazing area? I have been a teacher at the Warnington College. I was a teacher at what was the Nottingdale Training Centre, which was under the Westway. I then trained as a primary teacher and taught at in south of the borough on the Wallsend Estate. I've also taught at the Hortensia Road site as on the foundation degree course. So most of my experience in education has been through teaching. I've actually taught all the way from early years all the way through to adults. But also as a community member who it's become clear to me in the years that I've lived here what an extraordinary community of resistance, creativity, and talent that we are, that I have, become joined in and become involved and inspired. And certainly in the last few years, since the atrocity of the Grenfell Tower fire, I've been a campaigner, for justice for Grenfell. So I have 2 children, who've gone to school locally and, you know, who feel rooted in this community. So that's a little bit about my history.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Moira.
Hello, Mokhtar. Hello, Mokhtar. I think we've lost Mokhtar again.
I just continue?
Would you mind? That would be super.
No, not at all. Not at all.
He'll come back.
I have, since in the last few years, become a governor of the Warnington, of Morley Road, of the at Morley College, we always call it the Warnington Road site was, you know, obviously our connection to the local community. So I also want to talk a little bit about my role as a governor. But before I start that, sorry, I've got Mokhtar back.
Sorry, Moira, apologies. First of, hopefully the last of the technical issues of the evening, but you know how these things can be. I'm so sorry. I think I cut you mid-sentence, Moira. Perhaps I could ask you to complete your thought before I come back in.
Yes. I wanted to just speak a little bit about myself and my role, but I'll come back to the question of my role as a governor at the Morley College, the merged college, what used to be Kensington Chelsea College, but is merged with Morley. So I want to talk a little bit about libraries because as a South African born, I know that actually the stories of Black communities are not written in books. They were not when I was growing up. And for me, I always went into libraries to try and find our local library when I was a child, to find something that I thought there must be a story in this library about me, that's about my life and that looks like my life. I didn't find that story, but what I did find was actually lots of other books, you know, which inspired me to actually read widely. And I think it's what's inspired me to become a teacher. But also I found libraries an incredibly tranquil place. So when I moved into my job, as I said, working in youth training, one of the first, I worked as in the catering. I had a group of students I was training in catering. And the training centre had taken on a contract with Brent Council to do a function for 100 people of Caribbean food. And so when I came into my role, I looked at this contract we'd had, and I thought, I don't know how to cook Caribbean food. I have absolutely no idea. What am I going to do? Now, I've got to remember, these are the days before Google. And so what I thought was, oh, I know, there's a Caribbean community down the road. I'll rush down the Ladbroke Grove. I'll see if I can find a library. And what I did was I actually went into the library in Ladbroke Grove, our library that we've saved. And I remember rushing around thinking, I know how to use a library. I'm sure I'll find a book here. And I found a little, I can't remember who wrote it, but I remember I found a pamphlet of Caribbean recipes. And I think it was linked to the fact that the college at that time was running courses on Caribbean cookery. And I think one of the people who was running those courses had written this little, and it absolutely saved me, because I was able to go back to my students and say, well, I actually do know how to cook some of these Caribbean dishes, even though I quickly learned them from the book. So together with my students, we were able to deliver, this quite successful Caribbean menu for Brent Council. So, catapult years later to when I'm teaching in sixth form in 2014 you know. And I have, you know, students who are doing the A-level world diploma and getting ready for university. And these are students who are so used to Google. You know, they think that if you set them an essay, what they do is they find the answer by just putting it into Google. So I had to go back to trying to sell libraries to them. And I used to set every week, when they didn't expect it, a little trip to the library, which was part of the, you know, they thought they were going to sit in and have a lesson from me, but actually I trooped them all off to the library and they'd have a whole task to do. And they moaned endlessly. They didn't see the point of this task at all. But actually, when they sorry, yes?
sorry to interrupt more. So I think you've touched on something that I think is really central to tonight's theme, really, which is the idea that the library is such a magical space and has been so meaningful to all of us in so many different ways. I mean, I'm keen to touch on this a little bit more, but before I do, just in light of the fact that I was disconnected for a while, I'm not sure if Eversley and have we managed to introduce yourselves yet, or not yet at this point?
No, not yet.
I'm not actually sure. Okay, I have to apologize. I wasn't sure what happened during the disconnect. Can I hand over to you, Eversley? Can I bring you in, perhaps, and maybe we can get you to just elaborate on your intro?
Yeah, sure. Right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Eversley Mills, and I'm the manager of the Metronome Steel Orchestra. We're based in Kensal Road. The Metronomes was formed in 1973, and which is the first conventional steel band in North Kensington. Just a little bit about myself. I was actually born in North Kensington. I actually started participating in Carnival in 1965 as a small boy. So, and ironically, we used to live on a road called Camelford Road. And Camelford Road used to be exactly where Grenfell Towers is right now. So it resonates with me. You know, I remember, you know, running around as a little child. And I mean, I remember the library, you know, so it really touches me when we talk about Grenfell, because I mean, we actually left Camelford Road to go to St. Irvin's Road, where there was actually regenerating the area to build Grenfell Towers in the Lancaster West Estate. So I just thought I'll just add that. But yeah, but we're part of the Metronome Steel Band, Steel Orchestra, and we have been in the area since 1973, in and out. Also, we have 4 different bands. We have what we call a mini Metronomes band, which the age group for that is between 5 to 10 years of age. And then we have the Academy band, which is from 10 to 18. And then we have the main band, which we call the professionals. So we have a sort of a graduation process. And then we also have an adults beginners class, like a drop-in class for anybody to come in who wants to try and play, and it could be of any age.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come back to you shortly on that, but I think we can hear that the steel fans in the background, and I love this. I mean, what a talent, really, to be able to. I mean, Moira, you touched on the idea that, you know, you've taught all ages, and obviously now that you're saying that you've got these different age group oriented sessions that you deliver. I mean, this is me coming as a teacher. It is such a talent. I mean, it's such an art form to be able to teach a skill, but at kind of progressive levels of complexity. And I think who better really to talk about what learning is than yourselves, who've had that experience in terms of taking a skill all the way up to effectively mastery, or the concept of you know, really understanding a craft. With that in mind, perhaps we can bring in Phil-san on this point, maybe. But before we do that, maybe Phil-san, I can ask you to introduce yourself also, maybe just a few points as the others have done, and then we'll get into some of the deeper issues of the night.
Okay, hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Filsan Ali. I'm the director of a community-led grassroots organization called Mideye Somali Development Network, who have been operating in this area since 2002. Myself, I came to this area when I was 13 years old, grew up here, have my 3 children here, but then joined this organization when I was young to help the supplementary school. So the whole organization started off delivering supplementary school to the local community, mainly focusing people who have other languages who might need support with their children. So we've been offering after school homework support. We've been offering some cultural sort of dancing, some sort of a cultural engagement, language learning as well as their homework support. So there have been a lot of young people who've been volunteering for this organization Mideye for many, many years ago, and now also teach and continue teaching young children at the supplementary school. We are part of Westway Supplementary School Consortium, so we are part of many supplementary school consortium led by local community members that speak different languages. It has been so helpful. So from supplementary school, the organization developed and now deliver many services for the community. We have been involved supporting community during Grenfell Tower fire. We have been helping community continually till now through COVID-19 as well. So we deliver a lot of services now in addition to supplementary school education. So our supplementary school has been expanded to other areas now. So we started from Kensington and Chelsea, and now we're also delivering supplementary school education in Hampstead and Fulham. So it has been very successful. And what makes this successful is the young people who was there being part of this supplementary school and now educating other young people. It has been really fantastic way of, giving back to the community, contributing back to the community. And that is definitely something that we are proud of and we do celebrate all the time. And it's something that we want to sustain it and retain it for the community. And I remember coming to the library with my children many times, borrowing books, taking part some activity, children's activity that usually takes part in the library. It has been one of the places that I usually come and, bring my children. It has been really, really fantastic place to be part of this library. And I'm so glad it's been saved for the community. And I'm sure it will continue to deliver fantastic work for the community. I will be presenting my colleague later, who will be giving you more details about supplementary school education.
Amazing. I think I'm so grateful to you, Filsan, for going over some of those points in such an eloquent way. The key themes that I'm getting from our panel is the idea that we're really lucky actually to have such an esteemed collection of experts when it comes to teaching and learning. And I'd be very keen tonight to really dig deep into what learning is and how do we achieve learning, but also within the context of the library and how we can use that as a means to facilitate learning within the different paradigms that we all bring tonight. So I think with that in mind, perhaps we can start by looking at the idea of what learning is. I think it's maybe something quite subjective. I'd like to open up to the panel. What are your thoughts on learning? Maybe we can start with that and see where we go.
I think learning should be made fun, especially when you're dealing with young people, to engage them in learning. Some young people find it very hard to actually sit still, or their attention span is very, very low. And what I've found from my experience is that, especially with music, if you get them engaged in music, they tend to learn a lot quicker, because music, again, is mathematics, and I found with a lot of the children that I teach, make it fun, make it exciting, make it, rhythmic, make it, just engage with them and find the right process, the right way. There's different ways to teach them, but always try and make it fun.
I mean, can we just pause for a minute and just celebrate that as an idea? I mean, what an inspiring thing to say. Make learning fun. I think really that should just go up on everyone's wall. Yeah, let's go to you, Moira, on this idea of learning as being maybe something we can, you know, really get into and enjoy. Is that your understanding of learning?
Sorry, you talking to me? Oh,
sorry, apologies. I was taking your idea, Eversley, and I was going back to Moira and maybe Phil. I'd love to hear your thoughts on
my apologies.
What Eversley is saying about learning being fun. What are your thoughts?
Well, I was an early years teacher for, you know, a number of years, and that was one of the subjects I taught at sixth form, and I had to really instill that in both my students and certainly with a lot of parents. Parents often want to see a concrete thing that their children have produced, results and outcomes. And you have to say, well, actually, if I describe the fun that your child has had today, the enjoyment, you know, the fact that I think learning is immersive, you know, if children have hands-on, you know, when we think of libraries, sometimes people think it's all about academic learning, you know, it's about science, you know, it's about geography. Actually, you know, learning, a lot of learning is about engaging in something and experimenting and trying things out and making mistakes. But learning is also about connecting with others and sharing it and kicking around an idea and experimenting and exploring. So, you know, I think learning is definitely fun, and without it being fun, and I think without it being collective, it loses all its joy and its value.
Yeah, no, I like that. Yeah, fun and collective. Phil, what are your thoughts on this idea of learning being fun? Sorry, Phil. I'm not sure if it's just me, but I can't hear you.
Your audio.
Sorry about that. Sorry, I was muted. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. I mean, learning is supposed to be a process of supportive, you know, environment. People trying something, you know, trying to sort of do it together. That kind of environment of collective sort of ideas, collective learning is something that we do promote. And one of the learning processes that we promote is a cultural learning. It's young people learning their identity, their culture, their roots, their language, connecting with others, but also connecting to the wider society. So when we develop that identity and belongings, we believe that every young person will have that identity and will integrate and will also connect with the wider society. So that is the learning we promote, and it's something that we really, really, you know, appreciate and respect. Learning is something that everybody needs to have. Definitely, I agree with that.
I think I'd be very interested to hear from each of you on the panel tonight on the idea of, right, we've explained that learning should be fun. And I think that's such a beautiful notion. But I have a question, right? Learning can be tricky. Learning can be painful, right? Well, what do we do? How do we square that circle? I'll open this up to anyone on the panel to come in and maybe add some insight on this challenge. Yeah, well, I'm just to recap, we've got the idea that learning is fun, but we know for some of our kids that it can be tricky. What do we do about that?
Well, as I said before, I mean, sometimes you have some children who's got a very low attention span, and sometimes that can be very tricky. So normally we don't like to do this, but sometimes it has to be done, where you have to split them up in certain groups. And it's a case of, like what we say, horses for courses. And, you know, there's different methods to use to attract and make it appealing to different children who have got different attention spans. And from my experience, because we do workshops, but not just in our borough, but we do workshops all over London. I mean, in most of the boroughs, we do steel pan workshops and music workshops. So we come across this all the time, where you get situations where you have one or two pupils who really disruptive. And we're being disruptive because they might be autistic, they might have social domestic problems, domestic issues at home, and it's reflecting in the school. And sometimes, you know, I mean, being a teacher, it's also been a bit like a social worker as well sometimes, you know, because I teach for a living also. So, you know, sometimes, you know, you have to find out what's going on in that child's head, what's happening, what's making them behave the way they're behaving. And once you found that out, then you could, you know, then you could work out a solution or work out a method on how to deal with that particular child or children.
I love that. I think that I love this idea that you're bringing tonight, Eversley, this concept of, it's almost a multidisciplinary approach that you seem to take. It's, you know, you say a teacher is almost a social worker. And then earlier you mentioned the idea that music is maths, which is, I can see what you're doing. It's this idea of blurring the lines between what learning actually is.
Yeah,
I think, yeah, sorry, let me go back to you on that. I mean, I'm really interested to know, within the context of teaching steel pans, Eversley, what do you do when you have a student, for instance, or a group of students that it's not necessarily that they're disruptive or they're tricky, but they just can't seem to get it? What is the approach to teaching a skill?
Well, again, there's different ways. I mean, we have like chord structures, just for the layman terms, there's different ways of teaching chord structures, please. You know, so if you have a pupil who's more alert than another pupil, there's a way to teach that pupil, and there's a way to teach the pupil that is finding it hard to understand. So you literally break it down to them. For instance, like you might have, I mean, I don't know if you're a musician, so you might not understand what I'm saying, totally understand what I'm saying, but you might have a chord structure where you could just tell straight away, tell the pupil A, B, G sharp, whatever, etc., and they get it straight away without even going and showing them. It'll register in their brain straight away. And other people, you'd have to go and physically show them and play it for them, and then they understand. Some people understand just by listening. Some people understand by showing.
Interesting. So, I mean, you've touched on something here, and I'm going to open up to yourself, Moira, and also Phil. Saying I'm very keen to explore this idea of learning styles. Do you agree? I mean, I've even read recently that some in the teaching world have come out and said, you know, the different styles of teaching, maybe that's not correct. I'm keen to hear your thoughts. Do you, as Eversley is saying, maybe agree that there are different ways that people can learn?
I think learning needs to engage all of our senses. And some children use one sense, they're more comfortable with one sense rather than another. So, you know, some students can just listen and they can follow, where the other students need a visual, or they just use visual. And if it's visually engaging, they actually absorb it much more quickly. Usually when I'm teaching, I try and involve all of our senses. So students may have to even get up. They may even have to physically do something, because for other students, the idea of sitting down, actually, you know, which is why students doodle, you know, which we give them, because their concentration works best when they're physically doing something. So it's thinking about how we engage in students, you know, with all of their senses. And I worry sometimes that we've become far too dependent on just a kind of digital engagement. You know, students need to touch and feel almost, and talk and bounce and exchange and, you know, and make to actually engage in a subject. But also students have to learn that actually if you want to be skilled at anything, you have to practice. You have to practice. And I'm sorry, practice is boring. You know, this is not a great, sometimes students want fireworks all the time. It's actually sometimes it's relentless repetition. And then you cross that line where you get so good at it that it comes easy and it becomes natural. And then your skill becomes something that you become incredibly proud of, or you think, I really can do this, I'm really good at it. but it's helping students to realize that you've got to make that journey, that sometimes there's going to be quite a lot of pain, in inverted commas, that's going to be involved.
Yeah. I mean, you are so right. You're so right what you just said there. Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the problems we have with some of our students, where the monotony of practicing, and sometimes they find it boring. But I will say to them that even the best musician in the world has to practice. So if you want to, I mean, it's about life skills as well. If you want to achieve anything in life, then you've got to practice, you've got to learn, you've got to work at it. And this is what we always say to our students. Listen, you're not going to get anything out of this, and not unless you practice. There's no goals coming out until you practice. And this is learning. That's what about learning is. Revision, practice has to be done. I mean, basically, there's no other way. So you try and make it. I try and make it exciting, but you know, as you said, practice is paramount.
I think, look, this idea of makes progress, I feel like is so central. You know, from my perspective, you know, teaching a class or even a student, you know, trying to get their head around Shakespeare, for instance, this idea that they're going to get it straight away, or, you know, that kind of idealized light bulb moment, it's almost a bit of a fallacy. It's the kind of the graft, the day in, day out. But I mean, if we look at the title of tonight's event, we've got this concept of knowledge and skills. In terms of what both of you have just said, I mean, it sounds to me like we're saying, if you do the hard work first and you get the knowledge part done, eventually that knowledge will become almost a skill, and you can transition from, you know, the absorbing to actually the perfecting of or harnessing an actual skill. Is that kind of a fair summary of the divide between almost knowledge on the one side and skills on the other?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. I would say it's a fair point.
Maybe we can bring you in, Phil-San. How do we get a student to go from learning new knowledge to mastering a skill?
Yeah, I think that's really important. For us, learning also comes with a fun activity. So we don't do only learning, we also engage young people to have other skills or develop other parts of their, you know, senses. For example, we engage them with the football sessions, debate classes. We're planning to start book clubs, because we know that learning comes with so many different varieties of skills. So we do see young people engage with different sectors. For example, some people are very well engaged in physical activity. Some people love to do art. So we used to do art before the lockdown. We used to do outing. Some people love to watch movies, for example, as a group, and then come back and discuss what they have watched, discussed about the movie. So we engage them in different ways for them to make it fun, to learn. So that actually brings them together. We also offer a word evenings where we select those that are really achieving well to give them some sort of a word. We do have a class leaders, so we've got young people that have leadership skills. We try to develop their leadership skills by, you know, allowing them and giving them opportunity to lead in the class, you know, sort of settings. So it is really different ways we engage, and it all depends on when we see the young person enjoys that particular activity. So, for example, debate class, those young people who would like to debate attend more than the other young people, and the other young people attend more into the football sessions that we have. So, yeah, engaging them in different ways is really important, and it also encourages them to learn more and to be more engaged into learning. So I believe learning should definitely come with fun, and at the same time looking at the individual skills development.
I agree, actually. I think there's a little, they can sometimes be a kind of hierarchy of what's the most valued learning or type of skill or type of knowledge. And usually it's kind of maths, English and science at the top. And the child who's actually skilled, who has kinesthetic skills or physical skills, is not valued as much, or even music. You know, that's why, you know, it was so easy for the government to think of cutting art and music out of the curriculum, because there is a hierarchy, and students pick up on that. they pick up on it. But actually, if a child, a young person is skilled at one thing, you can transfer that success to another area. You know, we used to say in the early years, you know, catch them when they're good, and actually transfer that to another area. You take the learning to the child. You know, often we drag the child to the learning, but you know, sometimes we need to take the learning to where they're comfortable, the area that they actually comfortable. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think music is soulful. Music is, I mean, learning an instrument. I think everybody should learn an instrument, whether you want to carry on and be professional or just do it as a hobby. It's very important to learn an instrument. You know, because I'll be honest with you, I've never known a racist musician. Music transcends. It transcends, you know. So you could bring in all different cultures, you know, and make a recipe with music. You know, we've started this, and we've got so many projects that we're doing, you know, with different cultures, and you know, fuse music together from different cultures, and just it's about love. That's how we see it. It's about love.
That's I love this idea of music almost transcending. It's a language, isn't it? It's almost
Absolutely.
you kind of just, yeah. I mean, how do you teach that though?
It's
How do
something
you
that
teach someone to feel the kind of, you know, it's you can't even articulate that the kind of magic behind that. How I wonder, what is your, do you feel like there's a moment when your student gets it, or
there
how
is
does it
actually,
work?
and when they do get it, is you feel like you know, it's so rewarding when you have students come into the class and they come in, we're like, oh, I don't want to do this, and all, and you know, they all have this sort of attitude, and all of a sudden, you know, and you persevere with them, and after about 2-3 months, they're like, yeah, and then it just makes you feel so, you know, to watch them, you know, it's like it just I can't explain it. It just, the joy, you know, you just look at you and they say, sir, why are you smiling? And you say, no, nothing, no reason. You just watch them and just smile, because you see the transformation from when they started to where they are at that present moment in time, and it's just beautiful. It's wonderful, you know. And we're talking about all cultures, all races, you know, and just beautiful. It's a wonderful thing to see children enjoying themselves playing music, you know. And this is why I've made this my life vocation. Just, you know, it's just beautiful to see.
Moira, I feel
think
like
we
you've
don't.
got something to say. Yeah,
I don't
was
think
right.
we use music sufficiently for learning, actually, for learning other subjects. You know, because I remember when I was at school, you know, there was always a reason to sing. You know, there are people always singing. I mean, you don't need musical instruments, and we basically learned all of our timetables by singing them. You know, so and it was like, you know, most of us can remember the words of songs, and so we sing them. So actually, I am still very, very good at my times tables because they like songs. I remembered. But, you know, you see in other educational systems, they use music to help children to remember. If there's knowledge you want them in certain subjects, you want them to remember facts. You know, you can use music actually to actually, so almost to do a little bit of drill, you know, for them to learn subjects. But we don't. We silo out subjects. You know, we don't teach to a whole child, or to, you know, in any kind of organic way. We teach it, you know, maths in these separate subjects. Whereas I think in other countries, they actually, for a long time before they get into the separate subjects, they actually teach in a more organic way. And I know that teaching children in nursery, the children who had additional needs came alive when we were singing. You know, we used to teach numbers, alphabets, you know, all days of the week, all through music and song. And that was the one time that you saw them come alive and smile and join in, you know. So I think music is very, very much underrated, I think.
Absolutely.
As a teaching tool.
Could I say, sorry.
Go on. No, go ahead, Evans Lee. You're about to say something.
Okay. No, I was going to say, during the lockdown, when the lockdown started last year, and obviously we couldn't open up, we had to shut down. So we said to ourselves, what can we do? What can we do to engage with the community and the wider community? And so we started a virtual program, we call it the virtual Panyard. And basically it was like on Instagram and Facebook, where we call it online jamming session. We've done it every Sunday, every Friday. And we also had a children's reading program and an adults reading program. And at first we said, well, we're going to do it for like 3 months and let's see how it goes. This was last year, and we're still doing it now.
Wow.
Over a year, and constantly. I mean, give or take, we missed a couple of weeks, but we've been doing it now for nearly 50 odd weeks. And so we had the children's one, that got stopped, but we did the adults reading program, where we have members of our band read different novels, whether it's Black history, whether it's to do with carnival or poetry, or we've got this, we do Maya Angelou, the poet,
Wow.
and then for that, then we do online jamming sessions with playing steel pan live and engaging with our members and the wider community. We've gone so far as getting readers from the Caribbean to come online, put on a Metronome t-shirt. And yeah, I mean, I've got grandchildren in the Caribbean, and they've been online and doing the reading program from the Caribbean. So yeah, and I mean,
how do you have grandchildren and you're younger than me?
Well, it's a long story. We don't want to go into that. Leave that for another session.
I was complimenting how young you look. Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's the music. It's the music.
It's the music. That's a good answer. That is a great answer. Right. I think, Phil, let me bring you in on this. We're having a bit of an interesting conversation. There are some themes I really want to go into. Look, when we're talking about teaching and learning, North Kensington is a mixed community, as we all know. But let's not forget that we have some disenfranchised, marginalized, very, very poor pockets within our community. And, traditionally, there are certain realms of academia that those from such communities might feel that they are not welcome into. And thus we may look at different avenues to go into in which that we can actually feel more welcome. And that's why we get this kind of explosion of creativity, perhaps. My question really is, building on what you said, Moira, this idea of what is kind of the professional, the impressive types of learning versus the the Mickey Mouse style, the music and the arts. What is that? Where is that coming from, and what do we do about that?
Sorry, guys, has somebody got their speakers on their laptop? If so, could you turn your laptop off if you've got a laptop going in the room? Thank you. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, again. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go on,
yeah. So, I mean, in terms of, I absolutely agree with the other panelists. Learning with, art and music is really valuable, and to encourage that is really valuable. But then we do have, for example, the supplementary school, for example, we had started off with one community. So at the beginning, it was only serving the Somali community. But as we grew, now it's serving everybody in the community. Even though we call it supplementary school, sometimes we question whether we change it to homework support club or homework club or something like that, because it's serving a wider ethnic minorities that live in the area. But then when it comes to music, we've got that rich culture that everybody is coming from, certain culture, bring certain understanding, certain musics that they enjoy. One of the things that bring the community together is when we done a cultural dance. And that brought a variety of cultures. You can see young people dressing up with their own culture, coming in, dancing their own culture. So that kind of music mixed with education and learning not only develops the young person to engage, but also it develops that kind of connection with other communities around them. So that belongings and the connection, like You know, it was said music is a love. It brings people together. You don't see any kind of division within the music, you know, environment. I think that is something that needs to be promoted, and it's not promoted properly, I would say. It's just that because of the capacity charities have to do that more, it's not there. So we've been funded to provide education, but what we do in addition is everything our volunteers help us to do. So our young volunteers create those kind of ideas, bringing people together, bringing, you know, community and culture and identity within the education, you know, sort of support that we provide. Definitely something that we need to encourage more. It's something that we need to think about as a community. How can we bring all that richness of music and skills into the educational support that we're offering?
Do you think, this is a question out to everyone on the panel, do you think that we're setting our kids up to fail by segmenting the learning in the confines of the subjects, as Moira, you alluded to earlier? The idea of, you know, maths lesson, an English lesson, is that where we're going wrong? Is that why we seem to have this hierarchy of learning? You know, the arts maybe seeming to be not as serious, so to speak, as, you know, the languages and the maths and the, is that where we're going wrong, perhaps?
I think there has been a hierarchy within education for decades. You know, it's got worse, the hierarchy, I think, in a way. I mean, I'm particularly, as I said, when I introduced how I came into the area, I was working in a training center that taught construction skills. You know, we had bricklaying, plumbing, carpentry. I was catering, and there was also obviously computer and business administration. But there seems to be we've lost all of that. You know, the idea of somebody actually training to be a skilled construction worker, and I'd use that loosely, it seems to have lost its value. You know, the idea of apprenticeships seems to have lost its value. Yet you look at countries like Germany, and I've done exchanges with my students to Germany, is actually to get into an apprenticeship in Germany is much more prestigious than to go to university. You know, it's much harder, it's much tougher, and actually it's much more prestigious. But here we push our children towards an academic, and I'm not saying that actually we shouldn't have a baseline. I think all children should have a baseline in GCSE maths, English, you know, and science. You know, that's important for their, you know, their progression in life generally. But actually the idea that they all need to be aiming for A's and B's so they can go on to university, what happens to the child who's not academic, who actually is very good at constructing and visualizing and, you know, building and, you know, people seem to think that actually the construction skills don't require a huge amount of maths, a knowledge of science, engineering. You know, I always feel like I'm having to go back to sell those kind of skills, because there is this particular hierarchy with academic and A levels, which sit at the top, and everything else at the bottom, including music, the arts, you know, drama, fashion, all of those things right at the bottom.
This is fascinating for me. I think this is so central to. I really wish that, you know, someone in the world of education and, you know, in terms of higher ups, at some point get the message that we're trying to convey. I think, which is maybe this hierarchy isn't the right way. Maybe there's a different way, perhaps. Eversley, let me bring you in on this. You know, what would you say to someone that says, right, English is more important than music, or maths is more important than music?
I would disagree. Strongly disagree with that. You know, from my experience in my band, we've got quite a few members of my band who's gone off to university. You know, most of my players actually go to university, and there's a pattern that happens in our band where, so I'm going uni now. You know, I really haven't got time to be playing pan anymore. I'm going off to do unions and, you know, progressing my career. And, you know, become a biological engineer, whatever you want to be. And they go off, they go to university, and every single one of them, they go to university, get their degree, and then they come back. And I'll say, well, it's oh, I miss my music, I miss my pan. And, you know, and then they end up being a music teacher. You know, and they've got all these fancy degrees, you know. So it's like, you know, it's like a circle, they just go round. I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, obviously you can never ever stop, you know, disencourage anybody from going to university to you know, find their goal. But at the same time, I mean, they do that, and then they realize it's like a realization. So, well, hang on a minute, I've done all of this, I've got all my qualifications, I've got my fancy job, but there's something still missing, and they come back. They always come back, always. You know, so it's very, very important. I mean, you can't. I mean, these people, as you said, they've got this hierarchy where, you know, if you're a scientist and you're a musician, oh, you're just a musician. No, because even scientists play music.
Eversley, you mentioned earlier the idea that music is maths. I love this concept. Can you maybe just expand on that a little bit?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you're constructing chords. So, you know, basically you're constructing chords, and you know, there's like 1 and 1 makes 2, or you're subtracting where, you know, different this note with that note will make a particular chord, and then if you add in another note, then you get a 7th, or you get, I'm talking music now, so I mean, I don't know if anybody understands what I'm saying, but basically by learning to add in different notes onto a chord, then you get another chord, and that's where the mathematics comes in. And, you know, once the players understand that, it's very intriguing to them. They think, oh, right. They don't, because I say to a lot of players, and I think, what are you talking about? Oh, what's he talking about? Music is maths. But when they realize, I say, so, you know, you're actually right. You know, and it's learning to construct chords and different notes to put onto a chord to make another chord. That's what I mean.
Isn't that fascinating? And more, I feel like you've got something to say on that.
My brother was a musician and an engineer, and the thing is, he used to get incredibly frustrated because he said, I don't know why people think that science and music don't go together, or maths and music don't go together, but actually they're quite complementary skills, you know. So, you know, so it meant, because he was an engineer, he would do all the sound engineering for the band before they set up, before he started playing his trumpet, you know. And he could, or the keyboard. So I think, you know, as I say about us siloing subjects, I don't think as human beings we like that. I think we have talents that actually cross over in all sorts of ways that often our curriculum seem to imply that we don't, you know. I always wanted to do, I went to university in South Africa, where we weren't expected to go to university, but actually I wanted to also learn to sew, and I wanted to learn typing, but somehow or other I either had to go to university or learn typing. I couldn't do them both, you know. So I think sometimes whatever it is there's this kind of streaming that's common in our schools. There's, you know, there's expectations of children, and they get shoved into these little, you know, I think stereotypes of, and yes, and I want to see more Black children who are scientists. I want to see more women engineers, Black women engineers. You know, I want us to start challenging those. That's the way we challenge and push our children into different areas, because those are the areas where they're not recognized, their talents are not recognized. You know,
I think that this is
pushing the boundaries.
Look, so Black scientists, you've both just mentioned that music is a science in a sense. So isn't there an argument to say for our talented young musicians, right, there is a scientist in you by virtue of your talent as a musician, perhaps?
Yeah.
Is that a stretch?
Yeah.
Is that a case that we can...
I mean, that resonates with me as well, where you talk about the science in music, where even making the steel pan instrument is a science to it. And, you know, you play, you go abroad or you go on tour, and people are still fascinated that this instrument has no microphones, but it sounds so loud, and it's the only instrument to be invented in the 21st century. You know, and there's a serious science to making an instrument. So, you know, yeah. I mean, I agree with it. There's definitely a science in the music, and in the making of music, making of the instrument as well.
Let me bring you in on this, Phil-san. May I ask, which subject do you find yourself being drawn more closely to? Just to contextualize the question, I mean, do you see yourself kind of teaching kind of the maths or the English, or where are you coming from? Just so I can understand how to frame this question.
Yeah. So I'm myself, I'm a science graduate. So my degree was a science background, and here I'm working in the voluntary sector. So I think we do sort of prioritize education when it comes to, you know, people from the communities that we serve. And education is one thing that they actually push young people to take on. They don't look at other skills and other development the young person might need. And it is, I know many families, the compulsory part is that they have to go through one route, which is from school to A level, sixth form, and then to university. We do have a higher number. Yeah, we do have a higher number.
Sorry to interrupt, Hassan. I want to probe this question. Why is it that certain communities, look, I put my hands up. You know, the background I'm coming from, you know, being a lawyer or you know, something of that effect is, you know, obviously kind of pushed a bit more than other kind of careers. But I want to ask, you know, Phil-san, let me ask you first, why is that the case?
I think it's because we see ourselves as immigrant, and we see ourselves as being a, you know, BME community. When it comes to job market, I have to be honest, our young people or people that are educated, there's not jobs that would take them. We've got a lot of graduates now that are unemployed for the past 5 years. And some of them coming from a really well-respected university like Durham, London School of Economics, you know, really good King's College. You see those kind of graduates, they would never get a job. So they end up those kind of industry that would get them into, you know, they would go for positions that would employ them. And it's to do with really, really, really hidden, I would definitely say, hidden systemic racism somewhere, that the job market, it is really pushing down the BME community. And no matter how much you educate, I've seen PhD holders, I've seen master holders, really struggling to find a job. And, you know, we are pushing young people this side, helping them to go to university. But at the end of the day, most of them do develop mental health problem because they won't find the what they've been educated, the jobs they're supposed to be getting. They end up working in Sainsbury, Tesco. You know, some of them go into care jobs after graduating. It is really, really disappointing, and it's something that needs to be fixed. And parents also need to change their behavior of looking at other skills young people can have and other skills that they can develop.
So right.
Amazing.
Yeah, could I just say, I love what my sister just said there. She's absolutely right. You know, and that it's so frustrating, and I must admit it makes me angry as well, because she's so right. You know, I mean, we got a lot of our people in this community who have got well educated, you know, and they're struggling. You know, they've you know, it gets me so angry. They know they've gone to university and they've studied for so long, you know, and now they're struggling to find a job. And sometimes it could be just, but you know, they look at application and they see a surname. I'm telling you, this is a fact, and they'll say, "Oh no," they'll push it aside, you know, and it's frustrating.
I think the idea of the purpose of learning is so key. But at this point, I'm very keen to bring in our guest for the evening. We have the potent whisperer. We're really lucky to have tonight joining us. I'm going to pass over to you, Georgie. If you can come in, can you hear us? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you perfect. Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, we're good. Let's pass over to you. I'm really excited to hear from you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And big up to everybody on the panel and yourself for hosting, and to Isis and to Nick and everybody who made it happen. Much respect and thank you for having me. So I was asked to share some poetry this evening, which I'm happy to do. I'll just prelude that and just speak for a minute, perhaps to offer some like reflections for whatever it's worth on what's been said this evening in terms of like learning and knowledge. I know a lot of comments have been made, really valuable points to maybe reflect a lot on how we teach. And I guess to start sharing some thoughts on the point of gamification, so using play and games to engage young people, and particularly what would be considered hard to reach young people. I often view like games and play as so helpful and an incredible tool to engage young people. I also find it's a bit of a trick. It's kind of like saying, we're going to teach you something, but we don't want you to know we're teaching it to you. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it kind of feels like we're kind of tricking them. Whereas, and just to add on to that, before I connect that to my point, is that we often, our process of education as educators often starts from the point of presuming that the young person will learn, or that the person will learn. You will learn. You are here to learn. And our end point is the presumption that that learning will amount to a qualification or a certificate or such. But for me, it's all about, as an educator, what I try to do is make the learning meaningful. So whatever it is that they're learning is to make sure that there is a meaning that the young person or the person holds to what they're learning. It's not to presume that they will learn, it's just their starting point perhaps could be, what is your interest as a person, as a young person? What are you interested in? What like makes you happy and excited and naturally engaged? And then finding a way to connect the specific subject, if it's a STEM subject, for example, and connecting that in some meaningful way to the young person. Like when I was a kid, I hated science. You know, that stuff bored me. But if my teacher had said to me, oh, Georgie, you love space. You're intrigued by the galaxy and the universe and stars, and you know, let's talk about how science connects to that. Then I would have wanted to learn. Like I wouldn't have been smoking cigarettes out my classroom window. I wouldn't have been like disrupting the class and like whatever it was. Do you know what I mean? So that would have made me listen. And so I think definitely learning should start as a means to achieving the outcome that the young person wants to achieve. Like everything should be a passion project. Do you know what I mean? So that's kind of like one thing just to share. And the other thing is that, of course, we've talked a lot, or you've talked a lot about the approaches to learning, but not necessarily as much about what they're learning. So like brilliant points made about music, like I love that. And again, it's made me reflect so much on my role as an educator and how I can incorporate these things and so on. But also there's different types of knowledge. There's different types of intelligence, of course. And there is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is so largely overlooked in society and within education settings that, you know, if we're not allowing young people to develop within their own personal capacity as human beings, that giving them the space within educational settings to be human and to address human issues that perhaps aren't related to maths or science or whatever it might be. Yeah, when you give them space to do that, it can really help in the learning of more academic subjects. So like, what's the one thing that we all experience but I never taught about? Death. Something that I've been thinking a lot about for a long time, especially since my grandmother transcended a couple of years ago. We all experience death. Unfortunately, we lose loved ones. Most of us already have at some point, and are very mindful within the context of which we're having this conversation as well, of course. And we don't get the time or opportunity to talk about that. Like, what is it? How do we deal with that? You know? And so with that in mind, that's the spirit that I kind of wanted to enter into some of the poems that I'm sharing. So what I was hoping to share was 3 poems that I wrote for, 2 poems that I wrote for my grandmother while she was dying, and another piece that I wrote for a young person about death, to try and help them. So I'm not sure if you wanted me to go into this now, or whether I should just pass it back to you for the time being.
I just wanted to, just before you get into it, I've got like goosebumps. You know, you're speaking and I can just hear there's such a sincerity in the way that you articulate the ideas behind your thinking. I feel like it's really quite profound. Just to kind of relay some of the points that you've addressed tonight, this concept of emotional intelligence. Absolutely. I think we're definitely going to try and come back to the panel on that. I suppose with the idea that you've just brought in, maybe we can ask you to perform, perhaps, if you can come in at this point and give us your poems. I'm not sure if that's okay for you, but I'm almost on the edge of my seat now. I'm very excited to hear from you.
That's proper kind. Thank you, man. I appreciate the kind words and the encouragement. And yeah, of course, I've got 3 really short poems here. It is obviously about death, so if that's upsetting to anybody or it's not something, yeah, if that's going to create any unwanted feelings, then just please keep that in mind just before I start. So the first piece is called Ashes to Ashes, Love to Love. This was written for my grandmother. I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the screen. I don't know these off by heart, so I'm just reading from a separate screen. 1713, the time it was, the time I learned your time was near, the time of loss, the time for God, the time of shock, the time of fear. Death has come to knock now. It waves to you in cancer scans. It reaches for its clock, but you are not alone, we're hand in hand. I know you're scared, but know the reaper isn't always grim. I feel that when you die, you rise, so don't be scared to fall for him. Because death is just the cost of life, and grief, it seems, the cost of love. But love does not get lost in time, and time is not too long for us. Only bodies say goodbye, not the love the body's cage. The love we are remains through time, and out of it, beyond its space. You already showed the world that love, it doesn't see a race. And so inside you know yourself, the love, it doesn't see a place. It transcends dimensions. It ventures endless galaxies. It stays with you, remains a truth. It's permanent, it has to be. It sings to you when laughter ends. It holds you when the dark descends. It's actually eternity, before beginning, after end. How can life be after death when death itself is life anew? And how can you be gone from here when I remain and I am you? It's true that I'm the product of your love and all the life you made. Am I not every love you gave? Are you not love and I the same? Yes, we are. We are real. We are here till we are still. Then we're there, everywhere. Even after we are still. And none of us can know except for what we truly feel. But what I feel is you will know a home with us again that's real. As the distance dawns, as we begin to mourn, know that you'll remain with us. The love is just in different form. You've been such a source of love, so please receive the love you gave. The way that you've supported us is what we give to numb your pain. Circled by the circle of life, reversal of roles. Yes, I'll be the nurse at your side, and you'll be the person I hold. I'll carry every tear you shed, along with every fear and hope. I'll treasure every lesson left, every word I'll hold them close. A part of me will die with you, a part of you will live in me. And I will say goodbye to you, but I don't think that spirits cease. I believe you'll come again to rub my head till I'm asleep. Existence is a puzzle, now it's time to find the missing piece. What happens next was never really up to us. They tell us ash to ashes, but I tell you love to love. My heart is breaking, but for now I try to be strong. Yeah, I love you. I'll see you again, please God. So the reference there to Yaya, for those who don't know, is Yaya is grandmother for Greek, which my family is Greek, Cypriot and Irish. The next piece I'll read with you is entitled The People. To give it a bit of context, my grandmother, she had pancreatic cancer, and shortly before she transcended, she started to have visual hallucinations. And she saw her dead sister in the room with us in the living room. And she said, like, she's sitting at the table and, she saw other people in the room as well, who she didn't know who they were. And she just said, they're the people. And so I thought I would try and write something to act as like some type of poetic intervention or a way to greet these people. So the next time she saw them, when we were with her, that I could welcome them. Do you know what I mean? Even though I don't want her to go, that we could create a sort of dialogue with them. Do you know what I mean? To act as like, not a middleman, but you know what I'm saying? To try and welcome them, a type of ceremony. Do you know what I mean? In a way. So this is called The People. You see the people. Time and space suffuse the path, so guardians can speak with you. They travelled here to meet with you. We welcome them. They're greeting you. The guardians you see, we do not see. You see, they dream of you. These people, they have come in love. Yeah, give them a seat with you. The people, they arrived today. Through time and space, for you they are. Some you recognize their face, and others you wonder who they are. Soon you go, but not to die. You go to fly, you rise again. Your eyes will shut, so wide awake. This death is life, and life is change. The people soon will leave this land. They'll move to you and hold your hand. They came in peace and light to lead and guide you through the oldest plans. Love and light and lullabies, abrupt goodbyes to touch the sky. The people, please look after her and laugh with her till I arrive. Hear this song, let fear be gone and journey this important road. Yeah, let the people walk you home. We'll join you soon from Morton Road with your mummy and daddy, Kitty and Paddy. You'll be together as happy as Larry. We'll be together as happy as Larry. We're always together forever. My granny, my yaya. And then the final piece I read with you, read to you, is called Alive in Love. This was written for a young boy who's 10. His name is Bo. His dad died. How do you deal with death, never mind as a young person of that age? So I wrote him this poem, which is called Alive in Love. To my dearest brother, Bo, I heard about your dad. It makes me feel so low to think about you feeling sad. I meant to write you sooner, and I really wish I had, because I love you and need to ask this question that I have. Where does your love live? Think about it properly. You know the love you feel is real, but where inside your body? Do you feel it in your heart? Or is it in your chest or stomach? You know it's there, but where is it? Have you ever wondered? Well, love is not our heart or any part of us that's flesh. Love is not a body part. It doesn't need a breath. Love is more than what we see and doesn't simply end. And I believe your father's love for you still lives beyond the death. Because Bo, did you know that people can love each other from different worlds? When you were in your mother's womb, your father couldn't touch you. You had not been born yet, and so he couldn't hug you. He was in a different world to you. He was above you. But you didn't need to share a space for him to love you, because people can love each other from different worlds. And people don't just love, people are love. Your dad is love, and he will be with you throughout the ages. Love is never gone, just sometimes lives in different places. We don't always know where love is living, and it's sad. But in a way, it doesn't matter. If you feel it, then it's dad.
I mean, wow. I mean, you started there by mentioning the idea of death, which is, you know, it can be tricky. But I feel like in the poems that you've shared, you managed to touch on a subject that maybe we couldn't really talk about in it without the kind of, without the poetry.
Yeah, maybe.
So that's,
I mean,
yeah, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, how do you feel like you've harnessed this craft to express an idea that is really deep and maybe we couldn't do otherwise?
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I feel like perhaps we could do otherwise, if I'm being honest. Like, we don't necessarily need poetry to be able to do that. Like, death is, I've never really thought much about death, you know what I mean? But like, why didn't I think about it? Why weren't we taught about it? Something we can discuss in the function. Of course we can discuss it wherever we are, on the estates, on the football pitch, where, like, you know what I'm saying? Wherever it might be appropriate for us to have that discussion, and in a sensitive and respectful, compassionate way. I don't see why we can't and why we aren't. And so I think one of the things as well is that, like, when we aren't given the opportunity to, you know, when people think about being radical, or we think about protests or being protesters or agitators, or however we might define ourselves or other people might define us, like, being radical obviously isn't just about protests or demonstrations or direct action or whatever it might be. These are all, like, important things beyond I can even say, especially, like, given the new bill that's being read tonight again. But, like, we can't do these. Like, I can't. When I lost my grandmother, I haven't been active for 2 years now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I haven't done anything for 2 years. So it's like, if we don't give ourselves and our young people the time and space to deal with these personal issues, that, like, then they can't fulfill themselves within more conventional education, like STEM subjects or whatever it might be, because they're going through trauma, like, they're traumatized, that we're not giving them space or the tools to deal with that. So we're preventing their more formal conventional education by not taking into consideration their own more personal, emotional needs as human beings. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure.
Can I just? I mean, what an insightful point you've just made. The idea that, you know, we mentioned earlier the hierarchy of learning, and I think we were bemoaning this unfortunate scenario that we find ourselves in. This concept that actually, by creating this paradigm, we're actually hindering the academic learning, because we're not allowing the pupils to express themselves in a way that they need to express themselves.
Definitely, we're not taking a holistic approach.
Let me open that up to the panel. I wonder what your thoughts are. I mean, I'd be keen to hear from you. Can we use different types of learning to allow our young people to express themselves? And if not, is there a knock-on effect on other areas of their learning?
Do you want to go?
Do you want to go? I'll
yeah,
go if you want, but...
Go on, you start.
Well, with our band, I mean, we had quite a few people in our band, young players who have lost their parents, and quite a few actually. You know, and we primarily we're still band, but I like to see us as an institution, because we do provide support for our players, bereavement support, you know, even financial support, because you know, death is expensive, it's emotional, you know, and when anybody in our band passes away, or any of their parents or any relatives from the band, we're always there. We're there every day supporting them, you know, emotionally, you know, most importantly emotionally, because a lot of them have nobody. I mean, we've had people players in my band who have lost both parents, and I've become their parent basically, you know. And this is fact, I'm telling you, you know, and it is hard, you know. So we have to look out for them, because they're completely lost emotionally, you know. And it's a hug, let them cry. Sometimes we might even cry together, you know, and which is very important to release, you know, your emotions is very, very, very important. You know, somebody who doesn't release their emotions can be very dangerous. So we always say to them, you know, especially as when you have as men, you know, we're not supposed to cry. You know, we're tough and we're strong and we're big and we could take on the world. but releasing your emotions is so important for your development in the future. You know, so we help our players release their emotions, and we're there with them. And I mean, people that they could call me any time of the night. I'm there for them. You know, so I understand what the brother was saying, and I mean, you know, yeah, it's very important to be there for, you know, for the youngsters when they lose somebody, because, you know, it's hard enough when you're my age you lose somebody, but when you're like in your teens and you lose your parents or one of your parents, it is, you know, it's devastating. And sometimes that child could get out of control because they've got no support. They've got no support mechanism there to keep them together, to keep them, you know, on that straight and narrow, to keep them focused. So, you know, we say to them, look, we're here for you. You know, if you need to cry, if you need to talk, we are here for you. Sorry, I'm going on a bit, but I'll stop.
No. Eversley, I think, can I just say what a credit you are to your community, and I think how lucky are they to have such a pillar that you are really, and I mean, what an amazing support system that you've helped to build, really. So, you know, real credit to you for going as far as you have in terms of providing that support. I think I was a teacher. I taught at Kensington Aldridge Academy. I lost some of my students in the fire, and I still, you know, I had some of their work, you know, books, classroom books when it happened, and I remember the kids, and I think, you know, when you get your grades as a student, it doesn't say that your parents died in year 11, or you know, you experienced this trauma in year 9, or that doesn't come with it. It's just you either made the grade or you didn't. Is that fundamentally unfair to our kids? I wonder.
Yeah,
I mean, should we maybe look at learning within a bit more context? Sorry, Mauro. I'll pass to you.
I think it's unfair because there's this thing called value added that actually, honestly, this is a term that is used in education, value added. You know, the journey the student has made from the grades they came into the grades they, you know, so you as a institution needs to demonstrate how much value you've added to their learning. But often, and the students that I have taught, no one takes account of what's going on in their lives. You know, no one takes account. There's nothing in when you grade in that of actually the personal difficulties that they've experienced. You know, the fact that they've had to move, I don't know, whatever number, made homeless a number of times, that they have had actually, you know, as you say, deaths in their family, you know. And for a lot of the difficulties I had that I found difficult when I was teaching sixth form was also dealing with students' anger. You know, especially the students I was teaching who came from immigrant communities where they looked at what was going on back home, but we were not allowed to talk about it. We were not allowed to talk about it because of prevent, you know, because if we perhaps talk about it, we may be, you know, radicalizing our students or whatever else. So all of the stuff that may have been discussions that would have been going on at home about family back home, or actually trying to understand actually what is going on in the world, you know. So this is why the inspirational Black Lives Matter is demanding a decolonized curriculum, because we're not talking to students exactly about what is going on in the world and, you know, how they may have sense of injustice and what they may be angry about. And we don't talk about any of those kind of feelings, whether it's to do with pain, trauma, death, upset. You know, the curriculum has been so narrowed, you know, just for us to get them, as Mukta said, onto those grades, you know. And, you know, and as Einstein said, what is the point of education except to make you a more decent human being, you know?
That is profound.
Hello?
I think,
hello.
Is it okay to come in?
Yeah,
who's
of
that?
course. Let's open up.
This is Jacob. So one of the friends of North Kensington Library. I'm just a black screen with a voice, and it's just been lovely to see you and lovely to behold. Hello, Eversley, lovely to see you, and hello Moira, and lovely to meet some new people here. You're doing a great job. It's just wonderful. So when I just wanted to say, so when we started organizing this event, it must have been about a year or almost 2 years ago. No, I don't know. It was before COVID, and we were preparing to have the event in the library physically, and you know, but we ended up having that virtual. And I'd just like to say that the way we've brought, you know, one of the mottos of the library, or Friends of North Kensington, is that libraries bring people together. And I just think this is how we're doing this. You know, we've been enabled, you know, the virtual ways to bring people together. And I just hope that we can continue to bring these people together when we get, you know, when we're doing our actual physical events. And it's just lovely to behold. And I just, about the learning, I think that in the campaign, during the campaign for the library, I think there was a lot for a lot of people sort of coming together. And I think if we realize more about our own local history, and you know what's happened and who's done this and why we have this housing and why this community centers here, and why this playground's there, and why is that, you know, this little park here, and what, you know, these little things that I think in schools, I mean, I certainly wasn't taught about North Kensington so much, but I just think that if we the local knowledge is so important for us, in like the Westway. If you consider the history of the Westway, the 23 acres, and that time, the people that were involved in all that, you know, creating that and that story, you know, I think it was like kept, you know, it's not celebrated, it's hidden. We don't know those people. Like there's the people, you know, Anthony Perry and people that we you know, we don't know those people, and in a way we don't know what the Westway Trust was, or you know, the Metronome's history and where it began and the history of that. And you know, so I think that would really strengthen our community more, for the younger people especially, like to learn that, so that we can, you know, keep hold of and be strong when, say, developers come, or when, you know, there's threats to our spaces, but also to make, you know, a stronger community, and to, you know, appreciate, you know, that community. I think Grenfell really, you know, what you know, people made, you know, brought people together and really look at, you know, where we're going and look at community and how important that is. And I'd just like to also say that if I lost my trail of thoughts, that I mean, we're talking about the pain and the struggles and stuff, and like Ladbroke Grove really was like a war zone at some points in its history. There was even, I don't know if it's documented, but on the corner of Kensington Park Road and Blenheim Crescent, where I grew up on Blenheim Crescent, there was for a time, for about 6 months, a cafe, an arcade called the War Zone Cafe, and there was arcade machines in there. And I think that it got banned after 6 months because it was horrendously, like, it was just like a no-go zone. It was a very trouble. You go in there, you know, and you lose your money and you get into a fight or something like that. But Ladbroke Grove, you know, it has been a war zone. And, you know, if you look at what's happened on All Saints Road, and you're talking about, you know, people learning, and with, you know, in that environment, it's a very troubled environment. And I saw a picture of myself recently when I was very young, and I looked like a gangster, like really hard. I was about 12 or 13, and it was in the 80s. And I know that, you know, and people say, oh, you know, London is a, you know, a hard place, but I think not everywhere is like, you know, has the history of Ladbroke Grove. I know there's a lot of people that would say they didn't want their children to go, or, you know, don't go to Ladbroke Grove. It's a, you know, And I mean, you could compare, you know, to, you know, it's not like Northern Ireland, but it was a very, very troubled area. And, you know, I think that it's that aspect and other knowledge, you know, I think it will help this community be stronger, and for the children to know that. So that's sort of feed that into knowledge.
If I could cut in there, Jacob, I mean, I
yes, sure.
testament to that, because I mean, again, I mean, back in the 60s and early 70s, Ladbroke Grove, that road was a dividing line. On where Grenfell is now, that area, if you was non-white, you was in trouble if you went across that other side of Ladbroke Grove. It was literally like a borderline. So from like where Lancaster is right now to Latimer Road, near and the famous Pig and Whistle pub, that was the headquarters for the racists. And if you went across the other side of Ladbroke Grove, you had to be careful, you know. And when Grenfell Tower was first built, one of our players lived in number 7 Barrington Walk, and he was the second family to actually move there. And we had to walk him home. You know, we had to walk in groups and walk him home, because once you cross that road, that borderline, you have to be very, very careful. You know, and yeah, I mean, we've come a long way, but we've still got a long way to go. But Jacob is absolutely right with what he's saying here.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I remember there was places that we used to afford to walk around, especially from 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, definitely, it was really, really difficult place to live. But because of, you know, us all coming together and connecting, and, you know, we done a lot of change, and definitely there's a lot to be done. And just going back to the emotional intelligence part, definitely we are lacking the emotional intelligence, developing emotional intelligence within our young people, because feelings and expressing their feelings is really, really important. And our young people do not know that. It's not taught in the schools. It's not taught in other places. It's something that we need to encourage young people to feel that, because like when Grenfell happened, I have seen a lot of children and young people suffering with panic attacks, not able to express their emotions, you know, not able to sleep because they do not know how to discuss what they were feeling. So that emotional intelligence training is really needed in the community.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I also think one of the things that I think Jacob's touched on in terms of the library, and it's a skill we need to teach the younger generation, is that we wouldn't have a library, we wouldn't have a college if actually there wasn't a collective organization of individuals who came together to actually stand firm and say, no, we won't have this. Actually, this is our resource that belongs to our community. And they actually went for it. They scrutinized the council, they challenged the council, they wrote letters, they researched, they came together, they protested, you know. And actually that tradition within our community goes back, you know. We've only just watched Small Axe last year. You know, that has been an education to the extent to which communities, you know, here have fought back in the mangrove. And I think we mustn't forget that actually that collective solidarity and coming together is a skill in itself that actually we need to encourage and actually nurture in our community.
I would just say just to follow up on that. Thank you. That my children, well, we home educate. Well, we just don't. They just don't go to school really. They don't go to a state school for various reasons. But in all the campaigning that we do and all the community work, that is definitely, you know, we try, and even though some of it is very traumatic, and you know, like with the trees, like on the Warnington trees, my children, you know, they were crying and stuff. So that was quite hard, you know. But it is, you know, it is an education for them and community. So they're learning that community and how we come together and sort of and try and communicate through music and through, you know, coming together and what our values are and stuff. And so just, yeah, well, the home education vibe. Yeah.
Jacob, I just want to. Jacob, can I just thank you for your insight? I think you've brought in an angle that really we've missed, and that idea of local history. To quote Colin Prescott from the Grove Roots film that we worked on many years ago, the idea that our local history is global, you know, it's still in my head. It still resonates. But yeah, let me open up to anyone else that is listening, that is joining us the audience. I wonder if there's anyone else joining us that has any questions. Please feel free to come in, if so. No? Okay. That's fine.
Can I just
Filter.
quickly invite my colleague here who just wanted to say a little bit about her teaching styles online, if that's okay.
Yes,
and Sundus.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Hi, my name is
Yes.
Sundus. I'm with Medea, and I've been volunteering with them for a few years now, and I work with the young children. And recently, we moved the teaching to online because of all the COVID, and we've had some steps and learning processes about how we're going to run with that. And it's me and the other teachers have like scratched our heads and worked really hard, because as we've had the discussion earlier, there are different teaching styles. There's more visual learners, physical learners, things like that. And how can we incorporate that into what we do? And it's been a lot of trial and error, but we've figured out a way that we work with our children with. It's become more of doing a lot more, because we do key stage 1, we do from year 1 to year 3, and we have a small group doing that. We have to separate now from separating the class. Before, we could have in a whole room of children and have like different tables set up with whatever activities they were doing, but then now we have to set different times, and the younger children, they struggle to sit down and stare at a screen and like stay on topic. They would come in and just say things that they see or hear, trying to figure out like what's behind you on the screen. Is that an animal? Something like that. So we've had a lot of like disruption and things like that. But what we've learned and what I've learned to do is have small, fast-paced, fun activities, and it's like almost tricking them into learning, and to keep their interest going. And for the older students, I also teach year 6s and year 7s. We have the option, telling them the option, like, what do you want to learn? I'm like, here's a list of things that are in your school curriculum, the list of topics and like plays and books. Like I teach English, so I'm like, okay, so there are a bunch of poets you're going to learn this year. Which ones do you want it to be focused on? And engaging them in the choice of what they want to focus on with us, because we are providing the support, we are providing the help, and giving them the option and teaching them that they have a choice and they have a voice to speak out and say what they want to learn and what they're interested in, has really helped with that. And it's grown their confidence. Like at the start, like literally a year ago, last March, when we were beginning this, they were all silent, no cameras on, no replies, nothing. And it was a bit difficult to teach to like no response and calling out. But now they've grown more confident to say, oh, can we do like another class on this, because I'm more interested in that. And it's even as with, I'm an English teacher, but I've had students who they sing while they're replying to me, and then or when I'm giving advice, they have I would be like, okay, this is the activity we're doing today. I would type it on the screen for the people who are visual learners that need to see what we're doing, like step by step, break it down. I would read it out to the people who would like to hear what they're doing. And then sometimes a student would be unmuted and they would sing it to themselves so they could remember what we're doing. And then they would apologize and be like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. And then you have to remind them and say, it's okay, you learn a different way. If you're going to do that, please like, mute yourself, do it, and then come back when you're ready to do that. And it's just like building their confidence and reassuring them that this is their space to learn and this is their space to choose what they want to focus on, and it's okay to ask questions and be engaged.
Isn't that fascinating? The idea that, we mentioned this concept of learning hierarchies and, how we can incorporate different skills in different ways. You're teaching English through music, unintentionally. Isn't that brilliant? Just the idea that we can use different disciplines to convey different ideas. I know we're running out of time, and I can see that it is getting late in the evening. I have one thought that I'd like to put to the panel before we do end the evening, and that is, look, the library is so pivotal, and it has been saved. I think if we're going to maintain the space in the future, we need to bring in the young people. The young people have to be brought into the library, and they have to really start to take ownership in some way. There was an interesting idea about gamification that was raised. This concept of tricking people into learning. I have a question. Can we use this idea, maybe, to engage young people and bring them into our library? Is that something that can work? I'll just open that up to the panel, or to anyone, really. I wonder if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Can I begin? I think it's really definitely that is something, an opportunity that we can have, and local community using the library again, but using it in a fun, engaging ways. And it's something that we're really planning to do. It's a book club, telling stories, sharing, analyzing story, sharing ideas, sometimes dressing up for the story. There's some ideas that we really need to contribute, bringing it to the library when the lockdown ends. Definitely, if we are given opportunity as a community organization, we would love to link up with the local library.
I think that we're going to have to recognize the impact of the digital world on, the physical book. A lot of us are quite old school and love the touch and feel of books. But I think that actually the whole point about it, you can read books now in different formats, and you can read them on different, platforms. So if we can maintain the combination of the physical book with the digital book, and where students, where users of the library can actually come in for other reasons, using the digital technology, I think we'll maintain what our libraries are there for. Because, yes, they're there to read and get information, but actually, I've often used the library when my computer's broken, just to use the computers. Or I wanted to go in the library to read a newspaper or a magazine, and a lot of this you can do online because there is such a digital deficit in our community. A lot of children now don't have access to computers and, these platforms. So I think our libraries are going to have to adapt. But if they do, I think they will survive. And they're such an important space. I think they're an incredibly safe space for learning.
Amazing. Eversley, I wonder what your thoughts are on this. I can't actually hear. Sorry, Eversley.
No, sorry, I was muted. Sorry, apologies. Yeah, so just touching on what Moira said, is that basically we can have an archive centre in the library to archive different music, like a world music archive of the music from all over the world. I think that would be something that would be very interesting. That could be implemented into the library.
Yeah.
Can I come in on that?
Sorry,
yes, please.
Yes, because there has been some forums and discussions which were set up by Sean, the librarian, and an archive has been discussed, and that is something definitely. And then the discussion about change, and I think people want to make sure that there's proper investment before even we think about change. But on just feeding back on both Moira and Eversley's points, because they have been discussed in
I think there also needs to be sorry I'm talking over. There needs to be a link also with the local college, and local where there are where there's community learning. If people know they can access resources in the library, then there's much more of a community link within, if you can go and find books or, videos or tapes or whatever you need, that, you know, so there is a more organic link, I think, from not only the Morley College, but actually all the community centres that are offering different sorts of, from the supplementary schools to the, you know, to ESOL, to all the, you know, all the different areas that have been offered now.
I think that's a valid point. You know, the idea of connecting the library almost as a central hub to different, you know, outlets and bringing learners in that way. I wanted to raise this idea in light of what some of us have said today. Jacob, I think you raised this brilliant concept of local history. And you know, when I think of a library, I know you know, we've got these beautiful pictures behind us, and we've got a library. But you know, for me, kind of the essence of a library is almost, you know, I'm thinking of a kind of a village, and you know, there's maybe kind of a space in a community where, you know, people can go to share wisdom, share ideas, share thinking. And you know, if we're going to try and bring our young people in, I think, yes, let's make it fun, let's make it enjoyable. There is a stigma, maybe a little bit, that the library is not for young people. You know, I teach young people, I teach hard to reach young people, trying to get some of those kids into the library. How do we do it? Any thoughts on, you know, how do we get those kids to think that the library is cool, so to speak? I'll just open that up if anyone wants to come in.
Can I say something?
I'm not sure who was speaking. Apologies. I've got.
Yeah, that was me, Isis.
Sorry, Isis. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think in terms of learning, it's really helpful to have things that relate to young people in the library. So my eldest daughter, who you know very well, Mokhtar, she's dyslexic like myself, and she never liked reading. She's not academic. But one of the things she loved was comics. She's always been crazy. She knows everything about it. And something that she got really interested in terms of both education, in terms of learning and the library, was that at Brompton, they had a graphic novel reading group. And she joined that for her own tuition because she was just interested in novels. And so it brought her in. And for me, just to add in terms of this whole concept of learning, something I always really, really used to annoy me is that when my children, my daughters are not children anymore, when they were children and they were in primary school, something I couldn't ever get my head around is that everything that the children are into, you know, they were into Pokemon, they were into, you know, various other crazes, they always banned it. You know, if the children are into something, banned it. And I always thought, why can't, like, it's kind of like what Georgie was saying, you know, why couldn't you look at Pokemon and see it as evolution? These creatures evolve into bigger creatures, and maybe you could connect that to how dinosaurs and other creatures evolve. Why not look at the things that the children like and incorporate it into their learning experience? And I think that really resonates for me in terms of both education or concept of knowledge production and also libraries. So I'd say find out what young people relate to and put it in the library. Library should be a diverse space for diverse learning styles, you know, as Moira was saying, you know, everybody has a different learning style.
Hi, can I say something as well? Hello, my name is Ilaria. I'm also a youth worker, and I agree with the Isis. I was just about to say the same thing, you know, I mean, a similar thing. Like, we need things like, first we need like young people in the libraries. You want me to start the video? I'm in my, okay.
No problem.
Oh, it doesn't work. Okay,
That's
anyway,
okay.
like something like, you know, those apps they use, like maybe, you know, I'm just saying, like a TikTok competition in the library, you know? Like something a bit, you know, crazy, that they think, oh, this is cool, you know, something new. That maybe, you know, we can consult with the young people, but this is just an idea I have by, you know, working with them.
No,
you know, they
that.
use the apps a lot, you know, apps, TikTok, if they're a bit older, they use Instagram, you know, things like this. And they are very much about communicating, you know, they're social apps. and performing, you know, and things like
I was
that.
going to say,
So this could be
just to come in at that point. Sorry to interrupt. Just to let everyone know, we're gonna have a hard stop at 10 past. Just to let you know. So I'll come back to you on that. But I just didn't want to cut you off mid sentence when we do get to 10 past. But yeah, please do continue.
This is all I wanted to say. Yeah, just to
Sure.
to be open to new things, you know, and we need to talk to them to have those ideas really.
With that in mind, I wonder if we can end the evening with a thought. Moira, you started this event with an eloquent tale of your own experience venturing into a library in South Africa. And you mentioned the idea that you were desperately seeking a book that spoke to you, that had, you know, your voice on one of the shelves. Maybe we can commit to trying to get some of our young people to fill the shelves of our local library. I mean,
well, I think it's important that the books actually represent their experience. You know, it's we know that actually, I keep going on about decolonizing the curriculum. I keep going on about actually, I think Jacob's mentioned actually maybe something, the history of the area, of this local community, so they have a sense of who they are, what their history is, and actually they see themselves reflected in the books. You know, often we don't have novels and books. I don't think we have sufficient in the library, books that reflect our children's diverse experience, you know, the communities they come from. You know, so I think that may be one way of getting them into the library.
I think that is a wonderful thought to end on, perhaps, and it's something that I think we all share, the drive to make the library ours and to take ownership and to really invest in that. But I'd like to thank everyone tonight for sharing their thoughts, their ideas, their expertise. I'd like to thank the City Living Local Life Fund for providing support to make all of this happen. But I'd really like to take time to thank you know, the organizers. So you know, big shout out to everyone that's made this happen. You know, I'm just going to say a few names. You know, thank you to Nick and Isis, and, you know, apologies if I've forgotten anyone. But you know, I'm so grateful to everyone for making this happen. And yeah, I think we're going to wrap up. But thank you again to everyone, and I'm sure this will be the beginning of great things to come.
Thank you. Peace.
Thank you.